going to show you the prep work that I did for my container garden on companion planting. So companion planting is basically the idea that some plants work synergistically, so they benefit each other when they're planted together, and other plants, when they're planted together, actually inhibit the growth of the other plants. And so figuring out what you can safely plant in a pot with another plant is really important, both to make sure you have a good harvest and also to make sure you're making the most of your space, which when you're doing smaller area gardening like container gardening or raised beds is really important to maximize that space. So I'm a scientist, so when I approach any new project, I do it kind of from the lens of an experiment. And so you're gonna see this blue notebook a lot. This is where I keep all my notes and things that I've learned, all the things I'm trialing this year, and then the outcomes of those things so that I know in the future what works and what didn't and what tweaks I can make in the future. So in this notebook, I went through and wrote out basically for each vegetable, fruit or vegetable, what their companion plant is. So plants that can be planted safely in close proximity to that plant. Their ally plants, which are plants that actually benefit that fruit or vegetable in some way. So for example, if we look at asparagus, one of its allies is marigold, that actually deters the beetles that would eat the asparagus. And the other thing I have on here is their enemy plants. So basically things that would inhibit or stunt their growth. So you can see for beans, garlic, onions, and shallots actually stunt the growth of our bean plants. So we don't want to plant those too close to each other. So most of this information I got from a website called burpee.com. It's BURPEE.com. They have a really great article on companion planting that puts it in table format. So if that's a little bit easier for you to see, you can go to that website and it has all of this information as well. So then from there, I sat down and decided which plants I wanted to plant this year, and then looked at what I could plant with those things based on that chart. So you can kind of see here's my plan for what's going to go where. So from there, I was able to go through and kind of make this list of things that do well in container situations, and then what sizes of containers those tend to thrive in. So as you can see, I've got it separated into extra small containers, so smaller than 2 gallons, small containers up to 3 gallons, medium containers up to 5 gallons, and then large and extra large containered items. Really the only thing in the extra large were more like citrus trees, which I'm not gonna be doing this year. So I followed most of the suggestions from here. The one thing that I didn't is the tomatoes. So it says that the tomatoes do best in 10-gallon or larger container. I'm gonna be doing cherry tomatoes this year instead of full beefsteak tomatoes. So I'm hoping that I can get away with a little bit smaller, closer to more of a 5-gallon bucket, but once again, we'll find out. So as you can see, there's quite a wide variety of sizes here. So this one is a 20-gallon planter. I've got 2 hops plants coming that are gonna go in there. These are a little bit bigger, so these are probably, I think like 5-gallon. These are about 2.5 to 3-gallon planters. All of these on here are pretty small, so especially the ones down here are like maybe 1 gallon. So the herbs and flowers are gonna go in those smaller ones. And then our vegetables are gonna go in some of these bigger ones. So one of the first things I did with all these pots is measure them, measure the width and the depth, and then create an inventory of what size pots I have to kind of better plan my garden. So once I decided that these were the plants that I wanted to plant, I actually drew myself a chart with all the measurements of my different containers and went through and decided what I was going to plant in what container and what could pair well with it. So as you can see, some of the plants are by themselves. So I have 3 pots of marigolds because marigolds work really well for pest control for a lot of the other plants. So they're going to be kind of scattered throughout. And then I've got some other containers, like this one's gonna have 2 kale plants and 2 dill plants in it, because those pair well together. I'm putting a lot of carrots, kind of sneaking those in different places, particularly with my pepper plants and my tomato plants, because I can just sneak the seeds in there alongside those. So that's how I planned what's gonna go where and how many plants I need to go buy. And so then next week, I'm gonna go get some plants and then we'll start planting. Yay! All right, got some coffee. I'm ready to talk about dirt. Now, why am I so excited about dirt? Well, the soil for your plants can make or break your plant harvest. In the past, I've used just like the cheapest bags of topsoil that you can get, and have been very unsuccessful both at indoor and outdoor plants. So this year I spent a lot of time digging into the different types of soil and new ways to add nutrients and things like that for the plants to keep them happy. So based on the things I've found, my understanding of soil is that you need 3 main components. You need a nutrient source, you need a way to hold on to moisture and pull moisture away from the roots to keep the roots from rotting, and the third thing that you need is aeration. So in above ground beds, you can add some organic material to the bottom and then add your soil on top, and then you've got some organic material that as it's breaking down, it's providing your plants with all the nutrients they need. In containers, you don't really have that option because the organic material at the bottom would take up too much space that would then be taken away from the root. So here's the recipe that I'm using this year for my soil mixture, and we'll talk through it as we go. So the first thing I'm adding is this all-purpose garden soil. I'm doing the smaller bag, so 3/4 of a cubic foot. And really, I don't think this is gonna provide enough nutrients for my plants, so I'm gonna add some other things to it. So the other thing I'm adding is this cow manure compost. So that's gonna just provide a lot of nutrients for the plants. I'm also adding some sphagnum peat moss. That's gonna help with water retention and keeping that extra water away from the roots. And then I'm gonna do some perlite for aeration. And the last thing I'm adding are these earthworm castings, just for a little extra boost. Let's mix some dirt. So you can see I added that whole bag, since it's a smaller bag, of the gardening soil, the all-purpose gardening soil. And then I'm just gonna kind of flatten it out so that I can put the other ingredients on top of it and kind of have an idea of how much of each I'm putting in. And then we'll mix it all up. So that's what my soil mixture looks like before I've got it all mixed. As you can see, there's probably less than 1/3 perlite in there. I find that it just goes a long way. So I tend to lean more towards doing a little more compost and kind of taking that out of the section of perlite. And then I just have been doing just kind of a stripe of the worm castings just to add a little bit of extra nutrients, and then we mix it all up. what it looks like all mixed. It's nice and light, so the roots will be able to get down in there, but it's got a lot of good nutrients from the compost and the worm castings. I do fully anticipate that later in the season, so probably after the plants have been in the ground between probably about 60 days, I'll probably need to add some more compost to the top just to give them some more nutrients. But otherwise, I think this blend's gonna work out pretty well. Thanks for coming on this journey with me. Next step plans, and as always, happy gardening.